My name is Olivia Hayes, and people often describe me as the kind of woman who seems to have it all figured out. A corner office in downtown Chicago, a breathtaking skyline view, silk blouses that whisper confidence when I move, and the kind of calm, measured voice that turns heads in a boardroom. But if you looked closer, if you could hear the echo inside my chest when the city outside goes quiet, you'd know the truth. My strength was not gifted to me. It was carved, brutally, from loss and betrayal. That morning, sunlight spilled through the tall glass windows of my office, bouncing off the framed photograph of my mother and father that I still keep on my desk. I traced the edge of the frame with my thumb, the way you do when you're grounding yourself. That's when my phone buzzed against the mahogany surface. The name flashing on the screen made my throat tighten. Margaret Hayes. My mother-in-law. I hadn't spoken to her in nearly 4 years. The last time I saw her, her eyes had been filled with disdain, her words sharp enough to slice through the thin thread I was holding onto. And now she was calling me. I let it ring until the sound became unbearable, then pressed decline. But the knot in my stomach told me something wasn't over. Some ghosts don't stay buried. And if she was reaching out to me now, after everything, it could only mean one thing. The past I had fought so hard to escape was about to come crashing back. I was 24 when my parents died. One phone call on a rainy Tuesday evening, and my entire world collapsed. A car accident on the I-90. They said it was instant, that they didn't suffer. But grief doesn't listen to logic. It crawls into your bones and settles there, heavy and cold. In the weeks that followed, I clung to my husband's family like a lifeline. They were all I had left. I thought. I needed them. I believed they would hold me up while I stumbled through the dark. But instead of arms, I found walls. Margaret, my mother-in-law, barely looked at me at the funeral. She pursed her lips as though my tears inconvenienced her. My father-in-law, Charles, kept his distance, muttering about expenses. Even my sister-in-law, Kelly, whispered that I was too dramatic. Their home, once a place where I tried to belong, turned into a cage lined with quiet cruelty. I remember one night, maybe 2 weeks after the funeral. I had set the table, trying to keep busy, my hands trembling as I placed forks and knives. Margaret walked in, glanced at me, and sighed. You know, Olivia, without your parents, you really don't bring much to this family. You should be grateful we're even letting you stay here. The words hit harder than the loss itself. My throat tightened, my vision blurred, but I said nothing. I just sat down, hands folded in my lap, biting my tongue so hard I tasted iron. Later that night, when everyone was asleep, I opened the last box of my parents' belongings that I'd carried with me. Inside was my mother's leather-bound journal, worn soft at the edges. On the first page, in her looping handwriting, she had written, "When the world turns cruel, remember, Olivia, you are not fragile. You are fire. Burn quietly if you must, but never let them put you out." I held that journal to my chest and cried until my body ached. But somewhere in those tears, a small ember flickered to life. That was the night I made my decision. If my in-laws would not see my worth, then I would create a life so bright, so undeniable, that one day they would choke on their own underestimation of me. I didn't know how yet. I didn't know where to begin. But I knew one thing. I would not let their cruelty define me. I would rise. Leaving my in-laws' house wasn't dramatic. There was no screaming, no final showdown. Just one quiet morning when I packed the few clothes I had, slipped my mother's journal into my bag, and walked out without saying goodbye. I rented a one-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood where the walls were thin, and the smell of burnt toast from next door lingered in the hallway. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I got a part-time job at a diner. Early mornings, endless coffee pots, and feet that ached until I could hardly stand. Every night, I collapsed on the second-hand couch, exhaustion pulling me under. But in the quiet, I would open my mother's journal and remind myself, "You are fire." It was at the diner where I met Elaine Porter. She was a regular, late 50s, sharp suits, the kind of presence that made everyone step aside when she entered. One morning, she watched me juggle 6 tables, refill coffee, and still manage a smile for a cranky customer. When I handed her the bill, she looked me straight in the eye and said, "You're wasted here." I laughed nervously, but she pressed on. "What do you want, Olivia? Not what you settled for. What do you want?" No one had asked me that in months. The answer slipped out before I could second-guess it. "I want to build something of my own. Something that no one can take from me." That was the start. Elaine turned out to be the founder of a small but growing consulting firm. She offered me a junior position, entry-level, grueling hours, barely more than what I made at the diner, but it was a chance. The first months were brutal. I worked through nights, memorizing spreadsheets until my eyes burned. I sat in meetings where men twice my age spoke over me, dismissing my ideas as too ambitious. Sometimes I cried in bathroom stalls, pressing a fist to my mouth so no one would hear. But slowly, piece by piece, I built my confidence. The first time a client asked specifically for me, I felt something shift inside my chest. The first bonus check I received, I used to buy a sleek black blazer that made me feel unstoppable. Small wins, but each one stacked higher until I could see the woman I was becoming. I started saving, investing, learning. Elaine became my mentor, pushing me harder, refusing to let me settle for mediocrity. She'd say, "Don't dim your light just because it makes others squint. Shine, Olivia. Blind them if you have to." And shine I did. Within 5 years, I wasn't just an employee, I launched my own firm, Hayes Strategies. At first, it was just me and a rented desk in a shared office space. Then came 2 clients, then 5. Soon, I was hiring staff, renting my own floor downtown, and signing contracts I once thought were out of reach. Through it all, I stayed quiet on social media. I posted photos of sunsets, coffee cups, maybe a book I was reading. Nothing flashy. Let my in-laws assume I was still scraping by. Let them believe I was invisible. Because I knew one day the truth would find its way back to them. And when it did, I wanted the reveal to be unforgettable. The knock on my office door came on a Friday afternoon, just as the Chicago skyline was painted gold by the setting sun. I had been reviewing contracts, my fountain pen poised over the last signature line, when my assistant's voice buzzed through the intercom. "Olivia, there are 3 people here to see you. They say they're family." My heart paused mid-beat. Family. When I stepped out into the reception area, I froze. Margaret, Charles, and Kelly. My in-laws. The very people who once told me I had nothing left to offer. Margaret's sharp eyes darted around, taking in the polished white marble floor, the soft hum of the modern chandelier overhead, the sleek reception desk engraved with my company's name, Hayes Strategies. Kelly fidgeted beside her, tugging at her designer coat, while Charles shifted uncomfortably in his chair, as though the leather was too fine for him. They hadn't changed much, except now their faces were creased with worry instead of contempt. "Olivia," Margaret finally said, her voice uncertain for the first time I could remember. We need to talk." I gestured toward the glass doors that led to my office. As they walked in, I watched their eyes widen. The room was spacious, sunlight flooding across bookshelves lined with awards, framed photographs of business milestones, and a collection of abstract art I had fallen in love with during a trip to New York. Behind my desk, the skyline stretched endlessly, every tower gleaming like proof of the battles I had fought and won. They stood silently, staring, their disbelief thick in the air. I let the silence grow, savoring the way it pressed down on them. "You seem surprised," I finally said, sliding into my leather chair. I smoothed my navy blue blazer, deliberately calm, collected. "I assume you weren't expecting this." Margaret blinked, her lips parting. This company, this office, is this really yours?" I leaned back, folding my hands. "Every inch of it. Hayes Strategies. Founded, owned, and built by me." Kelly's eyes darted to the gold plaque on my desk that read Olivia Hayes, CEO. Her mouth opened and closed like she was searching for words. Charles cleared his throat. We didn't realize. We thought. You thought I'd be struggling." I cut in, my voice sharper now. "You thought after my parents died I'd collapse. That without your approval, I would wither. Isn't that right? Margaret shifted uncomfortably. For once, she had no retort. I stood, moving toward the large window. The city glittered beneath me, alive, unbothered. My reflection stared back, a woman they once dismissed as weak, now unshakable. I built this, I said softly, more to myself than to them. Then louder. Every late night, every tear, every sacrifice. I did this. Alone. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. Finally, Kelly whispered, "We're sorry, Olivia." The words sounded foreign, forced, yet hearing them still sent a pang through my chest. I turned back, meeting each of their eyes in turn. You don't get to erase what you did. You don't get to act like your cruelty didn't shape me. But yes, you're right about one thing. I am different now. Stronger than you ever imagined. Their faces were pale, their pride unraveling before me. It was everything I had once dreamed of, yet it didn't taste like revenge. It tasted like freedom. I let the truth hang between us, steady and undeniable, before saying the words that shifted the air entirely. You came here today because you need me, not the other way around. And for the first time, I saw it in their eyes. The realization that the powerless girl they once pitied had become the woman holding all the power. For a long moment, none of us spoke. The weight of my words sat between us like a stone no one dared to touch. I walked slowly back to my desk, the sound of my heels echoing against the polished floor. "Why are you here?" I asked finally, lowering myself into my chair. My voice was calm, almost too calm. Margaret swallowed hard. We've had some difficulties. Charles's health hasn't been good. Kelly lost her job last month. Things haven't been easy. I arched an eyebrow. So now you come to me. Her gaze flicked away. The truth was written across their faces. They weren't here out of love, or reconciliation, or even guilt. They were here because they needed something. And for the first time in my life, the roles were reversed. I folded my hands on the desk. If you're asking for help, then you need to understand something. I don't owe you anything. You made that clear years ago, when you told me I didn't belong. Kelly's eyes filled with tears. We were wrong, Olivia. We were cruel. I know that. But pleased we're asking for a second chance. For a moment, the younger version of me, the girl who once begged for their approval, wanted to crack, to forgive instantly. But the woman I had become knew better. I'll help you, I said at last, but only under my conditions. They looked up, startled, almost hopeful. Condition 1, I continued. You stop the gossip. The whispers, the judgment, the small cruelties you use to tear others down. If you can't lift someone, at least don't destroy them. Margaret's lips pressed thin, but she nodded. Condition 2. Kelly, you're going to get back on your feet, but not through handouts. I'll pay for you to take courses, to find a career you actually believe in. But you'll work for it. No shortcuts, no free rides. Kelly's face flushed with a mix of relief and shame, but she whispered, I'll do it. Condition 3. My eyes shifted to Charles. You treat your family, all family, with respect. I watched you stand silent while your wife cut me down. That ends now. You want help with your health? Fine. I'll cover the medical bills. But you will start showing kindness, not just to me, but to anyone who needs it. Charles's shoulders slumped. He nodded quietly, the fight gone from him. And finally, condition 4. None of you will ever again make me feel like I am less than I am. I won't tolerate it. You want me in your lives? Then you meet me where I stand as equals. Nothing less. The room went still. Margaret's chin trembled. For the first time since I had known her, she looked human. Vulnerable. We'll try, Olivia. We'll change. I leaned back, the fire in my chest steady, but not cruel. Don't try.
Do.
Because this is your only chance. If you fall back into old patterns, I walk away for good. And this time, you'll never see me again. Their faces reflected the reality of it. They knew I meant every word. For the first time, the power was mine. Not because I held money or status, but because I had boundaries, self-respect, and the strength they could never strip from me again. Weeks passed after that confrontation, and slowly, almost hesitantly, I began to see small shifts in them. Kelly enrolled in online courses, sending me screenshots of her progress, her emails lined with cautious gratitude. Charles showed up at doctor's appointments I scheduled for him, no longer grumbling, but actually listening when the physician spoke. And Margaret, unyielding, proud Margaret, began doing something I had never imagined. She called, not to ask for money, not to criticize, but simply to ask, "How are you, Olivia?" The first time she said it, I almost dropped the phone. They were far from perfect, but I saw something I once thought impossible. Effort.
Change.
One evening, after a long day at the office, I returned home to my apartment, a space now filled with warmth, plants thriving by the windows, shelves lined with books I never had time to read, but loved collecting anyway. I made myself tea and pulled out the one object that had been with me since the beginning, my mother's leather-bound journal. The edges were more worn now, the ink fading slightly, but her words still glowed like embers on the page. When the world turns cruel, remember, Olivia, you are not fragile. You are fire. I traced the sentence with my fingertips, remembering the night I first read it, broken and hollow, in that dark bedroom where I thought I had no one. That single sentence had carried me here, through grief, through rejection, through the rise I built with my own two hands. I closed the journal, pressing it to my heart. For so long, I had thought power meant revenge, that proving my in-laws wrong would be the ultimate victory. But standing in the life I had built, I realized it wasn't about revenge at all. It was about freedom, about living so fully, so unapologetically, that no cruelty could dim my light again. The in-laws who once dismissed me were now learning humility. And I was finally at peace. I set the journal back on my shelf, poured myself another cup of tea, and walked to the window. The city glittered below, alive, endless, unbroken, just like me. And as the night wrapped itself around the skyline, I whispered the words that had become my truth, my armor, my story. They tried to break me, but all they did was teach me how to rise stronger.